Hello, this is Lucia Pavone, and this is my non-expository project for building conscious allyship. So in the first chapter of Feminist Accountability, author Anne Russo suggests that we understand accountability as active experience, not a passive one. And that is something that we do, not something that is done to us. So I looked at this non-expository project as a representation of this core theme. My non-expository project was based on my personal journey as a somatic sex educator and sexological body worker. While many somatic sex educators have adopted a curriculum that is trauma-informed and really inclusive of LGBTQ teachings, what I've noticed over the past 10 years of actively being involved in teaching, but also in multi-generational, multicultural, and multiracial environments, is that there is still a lack of representation in the actual teaching materials that we use. So a few years ago, I discovered a scientific artist who drew diagrams of Black and brown skinned people within the medical institution, and something that I had never really seen before. But this was a clear example of how systemic racism included the focus of its visuals on white-bodied people. So on page 55 of Feminist Accountability, the author writes, in her essay, Beloved Community, Bell Hooks talks about the importance of making visible multiracial communities share commitment with one another to address everyday white supremacy within and outside of their own community. So in my community, I have noticed a growing number of BIPOC somatic sex educators. Still, this is only a fraction of our community. And I do feel that we have an ethical and moral obligation to support our clients from not only a trauma-informed lens, but from one that understands the historical implications of the intersection of sexism and racism. My intention with this project was to address the lack of representation within the teaching resources used, specifically with the genital models that we use. So before I decided to do this project, I actually researched whether or not there were other sources for buying genital models. Were there other companies that were specifically BIPOC owned that I could actually purchase models from, and which I couldn't find any companies owned by BIPOC people. But I did find a couple of resources. One was the Feminine Embodiment Institute, which had puppet models with various skin tones. And I also found the Positive Sex Ed website that had colorful models of vulvas that were actually representational because they came from real models, but they didn't have a representation of colors. So I decided to focus my project on vulvas simply because of my time and my financial resources. So the author, Anne Russo, writes, creating collective spaces, including in the classroom, for embodied knowing and feeling, then I found to be one way of breaking up the system of callous disregard. This is in reference to the greater condition of systemic racism and the rules of whiteness that are laid in throughout our teaching and learning spaces. So it was important for my my project, or to view, it was important for me to view this project from a lens of being an accomplice, because I don't actually have Black or brown genitals. I did decide to consult with my best friend of 37 years, who is of mixed race, to ask her if there was a necessity or need for this within the classroom structure, as well as my business partner, who I teach with. And we all decided that this, if I looked at it through a lens of being an accomplice, and because I work with a great deal of BIPOC community, that this was indeed something that was necessary. So other aspects of this project was being able to create these models within a budget, because I was able to make 3 models for $45. So I want to show you the models. I made 3. This is one of my models. I used a fast drying clay and acrylic paints. Second model, and a third model. And the other piece to this model is that there's actually a detachable clitoris. You can see it from the back that goes in. So I wanted it to be multifaceted. And I wanted to show you a comparison to my very first model that I did about 6 or 7 years ago of the same material, but I did not paint it. This is what I was teaching with. So I feel like I actually needed to do this for myself as well, to grow and expand. So finally, on page 67 of our book, Russo writes, sometimes people will say that they do not feel they have the right to speak to an issue because they are not a member of the group being oppressed. Instead, they are part of the group that is privileged and or that is involved in the domination and entitlement enacted. She also shares, alternatively, when we recognize our integral relationship to the harm and to the people being harmed, that we can more readily access how we might contribute to addressing the harm through support, intervention, accountability, and activism for social change. So this is why I chose to do this project, because it's near and dear to my heart, and I appreciated being able to move through these pieces. Thank you.